A lot of the indicators in the global picture of peace and security have been moving in a negative direction in the last few years. Amongst those which are particularly relevant here, military spending is increasing again, arms transfers are up, and although the number of nuclear weapons has continued to fall, nuclear arms control itself is really beginning to stall. It's running into a quagmire. And so I think that there's a basic recognition amongst a lot of people, many of whom we have brought here for these couple of days, that we need to think about the problems afresh and we need to get some new thinking going. Some of the approaches that have been taken over decades to questions of non-proliferation and arms control and how to move on from there to arms reduction and disarmament, some of those approaches don't seem to be working so well right now. So the need is for new thinking. And for that, you need to bring people together. You can't do this just by writing to each other, and it's very tough even to do it by Skyping and so on. You've got to have person to person, you've got to have small workshops as well as big plenaries, you've got to have meeting and chatting over coffee and lunch and so on, and that's what we've been aiming for, and that's what we've been getting. When you're thinking about arms proliferation, not just of nuclear but also of conventional ones, the new technologies, the 3D printing, the prospect that you don't actually have to transport a weapon from one place to another, you can just transmit it. All of these things, these thoughts, will have big impact on the arms control field. And then connected to that, shift in global power patterns over the past couple of decades really mean that keeping arms control to the same rather narrow field of actors, essentially bilateral or sometimes trilateral that it has been for the past several decades. That's probably not going to work, that's probably not going to be acceptable, so we need to be thinking about how to open up participation in arms control to more actors. What the US and Russia do is always going to be extremely important. I think the EU has a clear role, and I think that there is recognition of that, and if you listen to what High Representative Federica Mogherini said, there's confirmation of that. I think that the states who are supporting the treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons also have a role, because they need to be part of a process that breaks down some of the barriers that is apparently growing between the nuclear weapon states and the non-nuclear weapon states. I think that actually governments that are in difficult regions, like the governments in Northeast Asia, so perhaps especially South Korea and Japan and China, have a very special role, because if they could generate there kind of better arrangements, better relationships, a framework for moving forward just for that region, that would have an enormous global impact. So I think there's a wide range of actors if you think of governments and intergovernmental organizations. And then I think that as it was 30 years ago, when during the 1980s there were very large public movements for against nuclear weapons, and those preceded then agreements to reduce the number of nuclear weapons, I think today that public movements and public awareness about these issues is fundamental. So the communicators have got a lot to do here as well.